My name is Mariam Majid and my roll number is BP1650129. My group number is 11 and my chapter is Fluid and Electrolyte Disorders Basic Principle. My topic is tubular function of nephron. So before going to my main topic, I'm going to discuss a little about what is nephron. So nephron is a basic functional unit of the kidney that consists of renal corpuscles and tubular attached to it. Word nephron is derived from the Greek word nephros, meaning kidney. Each kidney contains approx 1 million nephron which perform several important functions of our body, including waste excretion, maintaining body's pH and regulation of blood pressure, and several other functions. So let's go through the structure and function of nephron and learn more in detail about the different parts of nephron and the role of renal tubule in urine formation and excretion process. I am going to discuss a tubular function of nephron through the nephron structure. So as you can see, the renal tubule is long and folded tube-like structure that emerges from Bowman's capsule at one end and it ends to the direct system of kidney. Tubule is divided into three main parts based on its function: proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, and distal convoluted tubule. Distal convoluted tubule in turn ends into the collecting duct. So the first part we have is proximal convoluted tubule. Why we call it proximal? Because it is close to the Bowman's capsule, and convoluted meaning it is highly folded structure that helps to increase the overall length of the tubule in a small space. So we have a blood coming in the Bowman's capsule, and this blood vessels that gets filtered through this glomerulus filtration barrier to form the impure plasma that pass down into the urinary tubule. The glomerulus blood pressure provides the driving force for the water and solute to be filtered out of the blood plasma. Only 1/5 of the plasma is filtered in glomerulus. The plasma that gets filtered into the Bowman's space is known as the glomerulus filtrate. Now the glomerulus next move is to the renal tubule where it further processes to form the urine, and the further processing is very important as the initial glomerulus fluid that is filtered into the Bowman's space that contain a lot of things that shouldn't be excreted out with the urine, like sodium chloride, glucose, amino acid, and excess of water. So the first part is proximal convoluted tubule, where approx 2/3 of the filtered salt and water, almost all the glucose and ammonia and amino acid are reabsorbed. So we don't want to lose glucose because that's the hard earned stuff, and that is also very good for energy. So we don't want to lose sodium chloride as well. This is achieved by the method of reabsorption. So what is reabsorption? Whatever is reabsorbed is passed back into the blood circulation. So this is known as the reabsorption, and this is done by the peritubular capillaries, which is surrounded by the tubules. So 70% of the sodium chloride gets reabsorbed in proximal convoluted tubule, and same 70% of the water gets reabsorbed here, and more of the 95% of the glucose and amino acid gets reabsorbed. So next the filtrate passes into the loop of Henle. In loop of Henle have same role in reabsorption of important source, like 25% of the sodium chloride gets reabsorbed, 25% of the calcium, 20% of potassium, 60% of magnesium gets reabsorbed in loop of Henle. But loop of Henle has a major role in concentrating of urine due to the presence of special ion channels that pump out ions like sodium and chloride, because ascending loop of Henle has no water channel to move out, as it has channel in its wall that allows water to move out. After loop of Henle, water then passes to the distal convoluted tubule, and here we have more reabsorption of ions like calcium, sodium. So we just absorb those things that we didn't want to lose in the first place, and there are a lot of things that we should talk about it, but this is just an overview. So let's just end it here and discuss in distal convoluted tubule the final mechanism. In final mechanism of urine formation also takes place, that is known as the secretion process. Secretion is opposite of reabsorption. In secretion, waste ions of H positive are passes from the capillaries into the renal tubule, and this is the final step in the formation of urine. The secreted ions binds with the remaining filtrate and become urine. The major substance that is secreted into the distal convoluted tubule including H positive ion, potassium ion, and ammonium ion. Now the next and the last part is the collecting duct, and is a common, for example, it is a common drain pipe that collect the waste from all the houses in the neighborhood. except in the case that collecting duct is a pipe and the houses are individual nephron. So now I'm coming to distal renal tubular acidosis, which is my case study topic. And what is distal renal tubular acidosis? It is a disease that occurs when the kidneys did not properly remove acids from the blood into the urine. As a result, too much acids remain in the blood, called acidosis. There are a variety of conditions that causes distal renal tubular acidosis, including amyloidosis, Fabry disease, high level of calcium in the blood, sickle cell disease, Sjogren's syndrome, systemic lupus erythematosus, Wilson disease, and use of certain medicines such as amphotericin B, lithium, and analgesics. Now we have a case presentation of 57-year-old Caucasian woman presented to our institution with severe muscle weakness, fatigue and weight loss for the past 2 years. Her medical history included well-controlled migraine and depressions which were treated with sumatriptan and citalopram respectively. In addition, she had chronic hypokalemia, leading to multiple visits to the emergency department for muscle weakness. These episodes were treated with potassium supplementation with only transient improvement. She denied smoking, drinking alcohol, or using recreational drugs. On further questioning, she complained about dry eyes and dry mouth for the past 5 months. Also, she mentioned unintentional weight loss of 8 pounds during the same time. Upon examination, her vital signs were within acceptable limits. She was cactic with the marked temporal wasting, dry mouth, and poor dentition. No thrush was noticed. Her cardiopulmonary evolution was unremarkable and no organomegaly was palpated. Her neurological examination revealed decreased muscle strength in the upper and lower extremities, both proximally and distally. Furthermore, her tendon reflexes were decreased throughout. However, her sensory and vibratory function was intact. Now we are going to make a soap notes. First we have subject. In subject we have chief complaint is muscle weakness, severe muscle weakness, fatigue and weight loss for the past 2 years. Her history of illness is migraine and depression, and chronic hypokalemia, dry eyes and dry mouth, and unintentional weight loss. And the medicines she was using is sumatriptan and citalopram. Sumatriptan and citalopram for depression and migraine, or potassium supplementation for her muscle weakness. And current medication is sumatriptan 50 mg per oral taken with the fluid, and citalopram is 40 mg per oral once in a day. In objective, we have a lab reports of 57 years old woman in which her plasma level is very high. Her urine pH is greater than 5.5. Her urine anion gap is positive. Urine ammonium acidosis means low, and her fractional bicarbonate excretion is less than 5%. Urine calcium is high. Potassium to creatinine ratio is 399 milliequivalent per milligram. Repeated urine studies shows persistent alkaline urine, and her anti-nuclear antibody test is also run as antibodies against the Sjogren's syndrome antigen A and antibodies against the Sjogren's syndrome antigen B were very high, suggesting Sjogren's syndrome, as she has the symptoms of dry eyes and dry mouth. So we can say that after this test it's 100% confirmed that she has also a Sjogren's syndrome. So I'm in assessment, her urine study shows persistent alkaline urine, a positive urine anion gap, suggestive distal renal tubular acidosis, and an underlying nephritis. On further evolution, the patient was diagnosed with Sjogren's syndrome. In plan, we are giving aggressive therapy to the patients with potassium chloride 180 milliequivalent per day, or sodium bicarbonate 1960 milligram per day, and amiloride 10 milligram per day. The patient was treated with potassium and sodium bicarbonate supplementation to correct her acid-base imbalance, and she also received amiloride. Patient with severe disease may respond to this therapy. Amiloride inhibits the electrogenic sodium transport through the epithelial sodium channel and thus decreases the driving force for electrogenic potassium secretion. In addition, she was also treated with immunomodulatory therapy including hydrochloroquine, azithromycin, and a taper of prednisone. Hydrochloroquine is 300 mg per day and azithromycin is 50 to 100 mg per day. Hydrochloroquine suppressing the toll-like receptors in a wide range of these cells. Azithromycin is an anti-metaboloite that inhibits the synthesis of DNA, RNA, and protein, predominantly in T cells and B cells, although both medications have been used for the management of the conditions, which is Sjogren's syndrome. In notes, after 5 months of therapy, her strength and weight loss is increased, but she may go through the recurrent episodes of hypokalemia and acidosis when she was unable to maintain the high dose of potassium and bicarbonate supplementation. So she must continue her treatment and medicines with regular doses. And then we have her clinical course was affected by her intermittent compliance with the prednisone owing to its side effects, most importantly edema and lipodystrophy. But as you know that she has also a Sjogren's syndrome, so we are giving prednisone because it is a very effective medication to control the symptoms. Many of the symptoms of Sjogren's syndrome including fatigue, arthritis and vasculitis. Thank you.